today is day one of the teardown of Mary's bike. First thing we had to do is we're getting rid of all the yellow pieces. Everything's coming off the bike. We're going to go through and clean all that stuff up, get it ready for new LEDs and stuff. But when we do customers' engines and stuff, we don't go this in depth. Like we're removing the rear fender here and such, and I removed the front fender. For that, we have to remove the tank and the front radiator fairing and parts like that. But because we're really taking this thing all the way down to the frame, we've got a lot more going on here. At this point, we'll get the yellow plastics off. And right now I'm just pulling out all the bolts for the rear fender. And there's some screws up underneath that you have to get to, which Larry just did. And so now we're pulling it off and undoing some of the electrical connections. There's some old LED wires in there as well, but our turn signals and the brake light. And there's a modulator for the brake light to flash. I'm undoing her front fender now because since we're going to be doing LEDs and we're pulling her forks off and we're going to redo the fork oil and stuff. So I did that. At this point, it's time to pull the tank off, a couple connections underneath. There's a brown connector, fuel line, and then up front, you've got your speedo housing. So you just got to fuss with that a little bit. We got that off and set that on the table. And then next thing we decided we wanted to do was remove her air boxes, get the exhaust off, and go ahead and remove the main airbox plenum. So here we're going to go ahead and take the neck off, and we're getting that radiator fairing off with the chin spoiler on the bottom, and all these parts are going into a shelf inside the house, getting them out of the way so nothing can get damaged, which is what we do for our customers' bikes. And so at that point, we'll get that off, get that inside. We're going to go ahead and knock off both the air boxes, and then we'll get the exhaust off. And then we are going to do the main airbox plenum, which you'll see in a few minutes. I'm also getting the headlight off here because since we're going to actually wash the frame and I've got some stuff up front I want to do some rewiring. We're going to clean some wires up, cleaning up the air ride wires since they're actually too long. And when I put it on, I didn't feel like cutting every wire and soldering them, which we're going to do this time. I want to check all the components of the air ride, make sure there's nothing going on. So it's going to be a lot of wiring to do on this bike, clean up, make sure everything's good. I mean, we're going to go through every single thing on this, which is why we're going to take this all the way down to the frame. Right now I'm pulling off the left airbox and Larry's working on the exhaust, getting that loose. And now I'm doing the right airbox, and this is her favorite airboxes, and she doesn't ever want to change these. So they're a big air kit that's no longer made. Now here's the infamous main airbox plenum that sits up top. There's a bunch of sensors and hoses that hook up to this thing. It sits on the throttle bodies. And it can be a nightmare for people to put this back on if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, usually Larry and I, it takes us anywhere from about 2 to 5 minutes to do it just because we're so used to doing this. But I've had people hit me up and ask for help and stuff like that. So the exhaust is already off the bike at this point. The magic of video. Undo those hoses, pry it, get a couple sensors unclipped here, and we're going to just pull this thing up and off. And once that's done, you're literally down to the top of the motor. I mean, you've got the throttle body here, and we're going to take that off tomorrow, and we'll show you about that because the throttle cables are hooked up to it and all. So, but anytime you need to get the throttle body, you have to go through this mess. And for us, we don't care. No big deal. We do this all the time. But for people that work on their own bikes, this can be challenging. So we will do a how-to video to help people out at some point. So we're pretty much done for the day at this point. We've decided that this is a total of about an hour and 15 minutes. And I think that includes setting up the heater in the garage to get it working. And, we just found a good stopping point. So, I zoomed in here so you can kind of see the throttle bodies on top. This looks like a mess, and it's going to get a lot worse as we go down through this. All this stuff's going to be cleaned. The injectors are going to be cleaned, So this is step one. Tomorrow we're going to move on, do the radiator, and get a lot of these wires undone, and coils and all that. And we will be able to show you that. So stay tuned for part 2.